You're joining the conversation with Shortlisted, a podcast from the Greater Midwest Chapter, or GMC, of the Association of Proposal Management Professionals. We chat about proposals, the business of winning work, and nailing the shortlists in our lives. Your host, Paul Lockwood, Senior Sales Operations Analyst in the Pre-Sales Support Team at Vitality Group in Chicago.
And I'm co-host Heather Finch. I lead a team of proposal and presentation specialists, and I'm also the chair of the new APMP Pride Alliance.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
This month, we're having a chat with Mindy Marchel. Hi, Mindy. Will you introduce yourself, please?
Hello, it's great to join you guys this month. I am the Chief Technical Officer for Celentis International. We are a global proposal development and kind of surrounding elements of the whole campaign strategy for mostly large defense contractors, but we dabble in other industries as well.
Okay, well, we'll try not to be too defensive today, but
Perfect.
let's get to know you a little bit. We understand you started your career as an independent proposal contractor. What's that journey been like?
I did. So doing proposals is really the only thing I've ever done in my professional life. Directly out of college, I taught English in China briefly. And then just kind of through a friend, a proposal company that she was doing graphics for needed writers, and English was, nonfiction writing was my major. So it was a natural fit. So I did that. The first job I ever did, I had no clue what I was doing. I didn't know what RFP meant, but I was a decent writer, so they took a chance on me, and I've basically never looked back. The first, 3 years or so, I did it independently, and then my business partner, Aaron Birkbeck, asked to, he said, I think we could do this together as a business. He's Australian, so, it was a natural fit to have someone leading the Americas, and he, would lead kind of the rest of the world really at the time, because we had just kind of clients local to Australia and some in the UK. And over the years, it's evolved from just the two of us to, an additional shareholder who is our COO now out of the UK. We have 3 regions globally in the Americas, Asia Pacific, that's headquartered in Brisbane, Australia, and then UK EMEA, which is headquartered just outside of London. And yeah, the team has grown substantially, but it's funny, we always come back to kind of how we started, and it's a very family feel type company. And even though now we aren't on site together a lot, you just feel like that when you're working a Celentis project. So we get that feedback a lot from our associates globally.
So with that Australia connection, you did quality work?
Exactly. It's a funny story, actually. I worked an Australian government proposal before my business partner ever did, which is kind of ironic, but he worked American projects before I ever did. So just a little nuance.
So, in Mindy, I like, as you introduced yourself, your title is Chief Technical Officer, which I would say I've never met a proposal manager who's a CTO. One of the things that comes up a lot in conversations that I have is where a proposal team sits in the organization and kind of what that reporting structure looks like makes a difference in how the work gets done. I'm curious, what are your perspectives on that, especially as it relates to you being the CTO?
Sure. Yeah. I often get questioned about my title. What does that even mean? Because usually a CTO is Chief Technology Officer, and I'm not a technology expert. But it revolves around the idea that I created most of our process and am in charge of continually evolving that, and making sure that we stay in the front, have our finger on the pulse of technology and efficiencies in the proposal development process. But specifically to your question, I think all we do is capture and proposal work and some, post-submission type things, but we're not a proposal shop within a larger organization or a proposal center, So working with teams, capture teams that typically were brought in for, those must win or strategic type proposals and just BD opportunities that our clients either don't have the in-house capability to do, or they need, supplemental support. But most of the time it's, bringing in our team, which we curate for each bid, to kind of take over and run the whole thing. And a lot of times that does kind of create a little bit of tension between their in-house staff that, are used to working tons of proposals a year, whereas we do the big ones, multi-billion-dollar bids most of the time, for to just kind of take the reins and allow them to continue to do their day jobs without that additional pressure. But yeah, there can be some tension sometimes. Sometimes, it kind of depends on the type of individual. We work with a lot of subject matter experts within, our client companies that welcome our support because they don't want to have to do it all the work themselves, or they've been in a position where they've had to write for proposals before and they, realized that they should not be doing that. But other times, we just have to deal with it delicately. They don't want to let go of that control, or the content is their baby and we are trying to morph it into something that answers the requirements and they want to tell the story they want to tell. So it can be challenging, but it's awesome to work with a global team. It's and to be able to offer our clients that local expertise when they're bidding into another country or something like that. I love the international aspect of our company.
Does working with a global team become more difficult because of all the time zones involved, and how do you get around that?
It certainly can. For a proposal manager, for instance, if you've got, at one time, probably the most difficult one I ever did as far as time zones, our client was in Australia. It was during COVID, so I was in the US, and then a major subcontractor on the team was in Italy. So those are three very different time zones, but that's really what we're used to working with, our Australia team, our Americas team, and our Europe team. So you just have to plan and prepare. And in the beginning, we create collaboration windows that are like the high activity, couple hours of the day, and that's when the meetings are scheduled that everyone needs to attend. We use tools so that any time can, just digital tools so that everybody knows at all times what time it is in those other regions before you start picking up the phone and calling and that kind of thing. But we also take advantage of the time zone aspects. So in a sense, as long as you plan it correctly or in advance, you can really be working on the project 24/7. Somebody is always in the middle of their day. So we use kind of a follow the sun approach and can really take advantage of that from an efficiency standpoint.
Or follow the daughter if you need to.
Right.
And I think, something that I'm drawn to is like process and efficiency. And I love, you're speaking my love language when you say those words. So like, and you've been at the forefront of designing those processes. So could you speak a little bit to what makes your processes unique?
Sure. So, foundationally, I'm sure we are very similar to what people are accustomed to hearing, as far as the Shipley method, which, dates back to the 70s, I think. But the nuances that sort of differentiate us is our involvement of design. Design is definitely a discriminator for us, even with really tight restrictions for defense type work. We find a way and really focus on that, given that your evaluator is a human being too and lives in this world, today. I think the only reason I say that, I think a lot of us especially that have been working proposals for a long time, in my mind, I think evaluators sometimes just the image of an evaluator is, somebody that has been doing this forever and, is government, crusty person, and that's not the reality. They're everyday people just like you and me, which means they consume data and information the same way we do. And every day, it gets more and more digitized, and, nobody wants to read tons of long, boring written content when you're evaluating something that's competitive. So I think, even with the tight restrictions, just finding a way to make your message, you know, through imagery and other design elements. I mean, we push to design the project and the proposal itself very early in the process with visual storyboards and layouts, more like a newspaper style. And our writers function as journalists almost, instead of write. I think what's typical that I see, within our client organizations is everything gets written first, and then they hand it over to the designers or the publishing, support. And that just, I mean, our designers are involved in the kickoff meeting. They're involved from moment one. And that way they're getting a lot of that context too, so that we can actually use them as creative designers and not just people who know how to use Adobe Illustrator or something like that. I don't want them, the best use of their time is not to turn something that a writer already drew into digital media. It is to use their creativity. My job's done if our teams, if our writers and subject matter experts are going to the designers and saying, this is my goal for this page. And then it's up to the designer to kind of figure that out, to find the best use of that space and get the message that the writer wants to tell across. We also do a very kind of different type of color review. The color reviews are similar so that people recognize at what point, they should occur, that kind of thing. So we use, blue team, black hat, pink team, red team, gold, that kind of thing. But our red teams, we use a very detailed kind of check sheet for reviewers that the facilitator develops. And it's really a method to put that red team reviewer in the evaluator seat, so they don't have to do a lot of digging through the solicitation and spend a lot of time getting up to speed on the solicitation. It's all in the check sheets in the form of questions that really help, streamline that review process, and you end up getting an objective review in accordance with the requirements versus a subjective review, which is what tends to happen when an evaluator isn't educated about the solicitation requirements. That's just a couple things. I mean, we use a lot of digital tools that I think are a little bit foreign especially in the federal space, just because it tends to be, heavy paperwork and just that mindset. But, we are continually pushing our clients to step into the new age.
Why is the defense industry in particular kind of exciting to you?
Yeah, I mean, I love most of the clients that we are working with, and the contracts that we work on are things that are happening, 5, 10, 30 years from now. So it's really exciting. I mean, some of them are not that exciting, but some of them, it's really exciting to kind of see that new technology, new manufacturing methods, just all the new, you know, aircraft that's going to be used, or whatever the case may be. We had one a couple of years ago that was just so interesting, because it's content that I, as a civilian having no military experience, I would never, have access to that kind of information or even know anything about it. To even the things that are public, I just wouldn't know to even go look. So you get a variety. I mean, I think people don't really understand that the defense and even other government entities, they contract out almost everything. There's a lot of contracts, especially in this country. And so the variety of subject matter is vast. But because we focus on the process of doing the procurement, that can be applied to any portion of, any content. So we've worked on anything from, food service type proposals to logistics, and then high-end, technology and mission systems inside really complex, equipment and planes, trains, automobiles, all of it.
Well, we're going to move from the aircraft. We're going to then wing it by moving on to our next segment.
Right.
The best thing that happened to you this month. Heather, why don't you get us started? What was the best thing that happened to you this month?
Well, I kind of alluded to it already. I am so proud and honored to have been named the chair of the new APMP Pride Alliance. I'm very excited for the opportunity to partner with APMP and help, raise the voices and concerns and thoughts of the LGBTQIA plus community, and to just be part of that. I'm very excited for.
Cool. Well, congrats again.
Thank you.
Mindy, what's the best thing that happened to you this month?
So I just got back home to Minneapolis from spending 10 days in Orlando, where we had a huge team event. We killed a lot of birds with one stone. We were at the IATSEC conference, which is all about training and simulation, lots of cool technology there. And it was a chance to meet up with several of our clients. So that was fun. But then this was really the first event for us to see each other face to face since pre-COVID for some of our international folks. And in fact, some of them we hired in the last 2 years, so I had never even gotten to meet them face to face. And had some really productive meetings, and then team building activities and our holiday party last weekend. So just a lot of fun things that contribute to that sort of family environment that I was explaining, and it was just great to be with them all again. With being that we don't work a lot on site anymore, it's just kind of few and far between that we get to be in the same room together anymore. So it was a blast.
Very cool. I used to live in the Orlando area myself, and I know how much fun that whole area is.
Yeah, plenty to do.
As far as best thing that happened to me this month, I'm going to have to go with three things. I'm sorry. First off, the adaptation of A Christmas Carol with Elizabeth, not Ebenezer Scrooge. I appeared in that as Jacob Marley's ghost, in heavy makeup and chains. We had a 3-weekend, 11-performance run community theater out here in Woodstock, Illinois. Over 2,600 people came to see the show.
Wow.
And even though we had some actors, especially some young actors who got sick, or one adult actress who got hurt, surprisingly, none of them came down with the hum bug. Second thing was I was featured in the first video member spotlight on the new APMP website, APMP TV. I got to talk about my circuitous route to this profession, as well as some suggestions for those who might be attending Bid and Proposal Con for the first time, how humor can be helpful in our jobs, and I did put in a plug for Shortlisted. And the third item, getting the chance to celebrate our town of Woodstock, Illinois, being selected by the Today Show as one of the merriest main streets in America.
Oh, that's awesome.
10 of our residents nominated our community, and we were spotlighted on the Friday, December 9th Today Show. Chicago NBC station sending out a Mary reporter, not named Mary, by the way, it's actually Kai. She did some live segments before the Today Show, and then she did an interview with our mayor briefly during the national telecast. And our community choir was singing in the background. All of us yelled out Merry Christmas at the end. Very celebratory, and Mother Nature decided to drop some snow on us at the time. It was very Hallmark kind of event, and lots of fun.
I do feel like a Hallmark movie could be filmed in Woodstock. It's definitely got that kind of feel to it.
That's where Groundhog Day was made. So we have our big Groundhog Day festival coming up in early February for those who want to make their travel plans.
All right. Well, next up is Dear GMC, which is a monthly question and answer segment of our podcast where our members can submit questions and get answers from fellow proposal professionals. So we've got one for our guest Mindy and for Paul and I to ponder as well. Dear GMC, I work for a large defense contractor and mostly lead proposals submitted to the federal government. I've also done some private consulting on the side, which has really opened my eyes to just how different federal work is from any other. A lot of our proposals are form-based and heavy on the technical narrative or qualification responses. Visually, they aren't stellar. Do you have any advice for working with teams who are resistant to new approaches or flashy materials? And do you have any quick tips for bridging the gap between our cutting-edge solutions and drab, unappealing forms? I'd love to step up our game, but am unsure if it's worth the fight if we're winning work with our current approach. Sincerely, Fred Earl. So, Mindy, I feel like you're going to be our best bet at expert in this question. So what are your thoughts for Fred?
Yeah, I mean, we go through this a lot. And, continue to fight the good fight. That would probably be my overall advice, because you never know at any moment that winning could turn into not winning because, you just stayed in the dark ages of, with the government. Eventually, I think some of those things will change and will open up on the requirement side. But in the meantime, I mean, we do a little bit less of the form-based stuff. I have been, I do have some experience with that, but even when you have, the luxury of Microsoft Word as a requirement, it's still, Times New Roman, 12 point, and sometimes even Times New Roman in graphics and things like that. It's just hideous. You wonder, clearly the people who made the requirements had no idea what they were doing, but, or, don't know about design. But I think, we are continually arming ourselves with statistics that can help in that argument, internally getting people to buy into and, pushing the envelope with design, and just biting off little chunks at a time. Just because if you can convince them to do one small proposal, doesn't have to change their entire way they do proposals and, line in the sand, and every one after that is, we're going to do it this way. Just, and sometimes that could mean, let us try out this new approach in a white paper or a brochure, or, something that maybe it's not even a full proposal, or maybe it's just an RFI response, or, an expression of interest, or some kind of preliminary document where you still have to follow some of the restrictions, but you could play with, more peripheral stuff like, sidebar elements and metrics and quotes and, photos that are full background with color to the edge of the page, or, just kind of implementing a few of those things that you have up your sleeve or that are in your team's arsenal to just kind of push the envelope little by little. That has seemed to work. And sometimes even when they say no, we take the risk, or we have in the past taken the risk of doing it We'll up to Pink Team, for instance, we'll do it the way they want, and we'll also do it the way we want, and then put it in front of everyone to say, this is what it could look like, and usually once they see it, you can convince just about anybody because it just is so much more appealing and easier to read. It's not just that it looks nicer, it is easier to digest the material when there's, that design element turned up a notch.
Great. Thank you for those thoughts. And Paul, anything that kind of strikes you with this question?
Well, I haven't really done federal, so Fred, I don't have an awful lot of guidance here. However, when it comes to even your offside work, being creative within the confines of whatever your parameters are. There are ways to be creative. There are ways to make your text less dry, and to make it more appealing. Now, I mean, when it comes to Times New Roman, I've always been kind of font of that myself. Font of that, yes.
Yes.
But
Or that one was worth repeating, just to make sure.
Just to make sure. And when it comes to having things up my sleeve, pretty much my Apple Watch is about it. But don't stay in the dark ages, unlike my background here, which kind of be left in the dark a little bit myself, which is appropriate for this particular topic since I don't have a lot of federal experience to draw upon. But the only suggestion I would have that we've kind of implemented a little bit where I work is, and it's not federal work, but still, if you're developing, just as an example, a brand new standard proposal that may be a side item, maybe a white paper sort of thing, but don't think that all of the expertise has to be in your team. If you've got a marketing department and that you're not part of it, team up with them. Get their assistance. They have graphics people that know what they're doing and maybe better than you. So feel free to avail yourself of the other expertise that may not be readily at hand in your immediate team.
Great point.
Yeah, and I think Paul too, like I'm in the same boat as you where I haven't done a ton of work with federal bids, but I have changed industries and I have kind of seen different forms. And one of the newbie mistakes that I made when I joined a company was a common format that this particular industry had was the dreaded Excel file, where it's a couple hundred questions and you've got just a little bit of space to respond in text. And I was really like, as a newbie in this industry, I was very frustrated and, oh, I can't really tell my story very well. And I can't, and I thought of some different ways to try to get around it. Like, inserting graphics into Excel and some other things. And, what I realized in retrospect, once I learned more about the industry, is what the customer wants to be able to do is copy and paste that column and compare side by side the different options. And so when I realized the reason for it, that helped inform what boundaries I could push, what rules I could reinterpret, right? Like, I think that having that understanding of what the customer needs is really important to understanding what rules you can break. And I think there's lots of ways that you can get around the format in a way that still gives the customer what they need, still is meaningful, but can also give you the opportunity to be able to tell the story in a different way.
Yeah.
It's definitely hard to excel with Excel.
It's true.
But it sounds like you're doing your best. Okay. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Shortlisted and that you'll join us next month.
And just a quick disclaimer and reminder, the advice offered in this podcast is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only. Use of this podcast is not intended to replace or substitute any financial, medical, legal, or other professional advice. This podcast, its hosts, and APMP GMC are not responsible for the outcome or results following any advice in any given situation. You and only you are completely responsible for your actions.
Thanks, Heather. If we're now on your final list of podcast favorites, we'd love to hear from you. Email our producer, Katie Stutzman, at kstutzman@gmcapmp.org. To all those winning business out there, on behalf of me, Heather, our special guest Mindy, and all of us in the Greater Midwest chapter, we'll GMC you next time on Shortlisted.